Speaker.
Alistair Scott.
Mr Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. First of all, I'd like to commend Mr O'Connor for his initiative in bringing this bill to the House, his motivation for bringing this bill to the House, and last but not least, his obvious action, because actions are what matter. And Mr Speaker, this bill was brought to the House as a result of the Pike River disaster. But I'd like to also acknowledge that it is part of a concerted effort that is going on in health and safety, not just in this House, but in industries across the country. Government is aiming to reduce the deaths by 25% by 2020. And some of those initiatives include the Maritime Operator Safety System, the MOS regulations, which have been in for about 12 months. The forestry sector is collaborating together to increase the health and safety of their workers. FarmSafe are working with fed farmers who are working with WorkSafe, engaged in a whole lot of initiatives to make sure that their workers are safe. And the previous speaker suggested that this party was not concerned about the safety of workers in this country. That is just totally rejected. That is why we have introduced the Health and Safety Law Reform Bill, which has been, and has already been mentioned, has superseded this member's bills, Mr Speaker. I agree with Mr Lees-Galloway. The statistics in this country are not good. 75 deaths per year is not a good record. About 40%, or let's just put it another way, about 29 people die in agriculture sector alone every year. The same number of men, the same number of people who died in the Pike River disaster. That's every year. That's just every year, and that's got to be considered. There's going to be thousands of injuries, let alone the deaths, thousands of injuries, thousands of families that are affected by slack, poor health and safety regulations and practices that have been in this country for too long. And Mr Speaker, as a result of the Pike River inquiry, there are 16 recommendations. I can tell the House that they have all been considered and implemented, including consideration of the Australian mining regulations, which is the basis of this member's bill, sir. And as I say, because the Health and Safety Law Reform has superseded the member's bill, I cannot support Mr O'Connor's bill. But it's not just about the paperwork, it's not just about the bill, Mr Speaker, it's about the attitude and culture that are the key drivers to having a safe environment. She'll be right when it comes to health and safety is not right. Bit of number 8 wire is not good enough when it comes to health and safety of our colleagues and workmates. So this cultural change that will take place, it will take time. And I'd like to acknowledge at this point, Mr Speaker, a previous CEO of Transpower, I was a director of Transpower from 2011 to 14, acknowledge Dr Patrick Strange, the previous CEO of Transpower, who at the top of his agenda at every board meeting, the agenda item was not the financials, it was not the number of kilometres of cable that had been strung up, it was the health and safety record of the Transpower board that had happened over the previous month. And he has led the way since before I was on that board, and he is an example of leadership in the field of health and safety. And we need to continue to lead from the front, Mr Speaker. It's about, just think about 20 years ago when we talked about drink driving culture. The laws were put in place, but we know, my parents, my grandparents, they continued to drink and drive. Seat belts, how long did that take to get in place? That took years. I recall my parents not putting their seatbelt on despite the law, and my old man was a cop. So it's about culture and attitude that must take place. It's not just going to be about the legislation. But we will persist, and we must persist in developing the health and safety legal framework, and we must get it right. To Mr Lees-Galloway's point, we must get it right, and a couple of weeks won't hurt. It is important for the benefit of all New Zealanders.